Hi, I'm Mario Evon, and you're listening to Talk Truth, a weekly edutainment podcast discussing the things that most people are afraid to, but from a Jamaican perspective. From relationships, sex and sexuality, to the ins and outs of entrepreneurship, in this space we speak about almost anything with the intention to inspire, educate, entertain, and create a fair and balanced space where your truth shall become your power and set you free. Wagwan, my people, guess what? Episode number 11, can you believe it, of Talk Truth. This is your boy Maria Evon as always, and it's Sunday and we are happy to be here. Today's episode is another mental health episode. It's the second time we're doing one. We had one before with Nairi, which ended up being about body dysmorphism, and that was pretty interesting. And today I'm going to speak with a gentleman who goes by the name of Marlon Simpson. He's a clinical psychologist, and we're going to talk about loneliness versus being alone. Marlon, welcome to Talk Truth.
All right, thank you. It's good to be here.
How are you today?
I'm good. I'm feeling good.
You're feeling good? All right. You are a clinical psychologist. Well, first of all, tell us a bit about yourself. Where are you from in Jamaica? Where you come from?
Well, I'm from the lovely parish of St. Andrew.
You hardly hear anybody say that, right? The lovely parish of St. Andrew. All right, that's good. I am too. Born and bred, right?
Right. Born and bred.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I mean, although I've spent some time in other parishes, nothing beats St. Andrew.
Oh, wow. I've never heard that either. You're just killing me. You're killing me right now. And in terms of clinical psychology, why do you think you chose that profession? And, what drew you to it?
All right. I started out as a minister of religion, and I still do some work in that area. But I felt that I could do a whole lot more with a clinical psychology degree. Because when you're a minister of religion, you can only counsel people to a point.
Right.
But when you're a clinical psychologist, you can deal with not only everyday issues, so from start of counseling to the end, but you can deal with mental illnesses, you can deal with everyday challenges that people go through.
Interesting. And I guess the beauty of being a minister of religion is that it really brought you in contact with a lot of different people and different scenarios.
Right. And, many people think that when you're a minister of religion, you deal only with religious people. I tell people that perhaps 1% of the persons I dealt with were religious or had a religious orientation.
Right, so it's not necessarily the church people per se, as people would want to summit. And the issues weren't necessarily church issues either.
No, they weren't.
What the hell are church issues anyway? But
I'm telling you.
What are church issues? Are there typical things that would come up in a church space, different from life space?
Honestly, no.
It's just life.
It's just life.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of people don't really understand. That church people who don't go to church, we all have the same issues.
We all just people.
We're all just people.
Just that some go to church, some don't go to church, but we're going through the same thing, right? Different day.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was hard for me to wrap around. I mean, that's a whole nother podcast, right? We won't even delve into it because I know we could actually talk a whole episode about that. Thanks for another topic. I might bring you back for that one.
Anytime you're ready.
All right, what I want to do, I'm going to start with some definitions because I think they help to guide our conversation. So I have a definition for alone, and the adjective for alone is having no one else present, right?
Right.
And I'm going to contrast that with a definition of loneliness, which is sadness because one has no friends or company.
Right.
And one of the reasons I wanted to do this episode is because I have a lot of friends and acquaintances. You and I know each other a little bit, and it's hard to find me.
Oh, yes.
And you look at my Instagram, you see me at a party, you just wonder, when does Mario find time to sit down and do nothing?
Right.
So finding company for me is not difficult. But there was one evening I came home, and it just come down upon me like a shadow. I just felt I felt alone.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I felt like no one else was around.
Mm-hmm.
And I was alone in the house. So
right.
I was really alone.
Right.
I didn't want to define it as loneliness because I have friends and I have company, and I could have found company if I really wanted to. But as much as a part of me wanted to see somebody else, I was like on the verge of not really wanting to see somebody.
Right.
So I was stuck between this rock and this hard place where I kind of don't feel. So I was sad. I guess I was going through loneliness because I didn't realize I was sad. I felt away.
That's true.
I thought I was just alone. But now that we're talking about it, I realize I was probably lonely.
Right. And so many people think that loneliness is the same thing as being alone. And one of the things that I found was that loneliness, or there are 7 types of loneliness.
Right.
6 deal with other human beings. The 7th one deals with the absence of an animal.
Oh, wait, what was 1 through 5? What did I miss?
1 through 6.
Oh, 1 through 6 deals with not having another human around.
Right.
And 7 is the absence of an animal.
It's the absence of an animal.
Maybe I need a pet. And I would get a German Shepherd like I Am Legend. I decided that long time ago. From the yard space is a shepherd.
Right. They're very good dogs.
Yeah.
But when we think about loneliness is not just the absence of another physical body or the absence of persons. It's the overall inability to manage or to even engage others.
Right.
And that's not even voluntary.
That's the thing. So loneliness is involuntary.
Right. And as you said a while ago, when the loneliness came down on you, that's what many persons feel.
Yeah.
They feel that I want to engage, I want to be around people, but there's something blocking that energy.
I felt blocked. And I was actually physically tired as well too. So that never helped.
Right.
So even if I wanted to leave the house, I kind of didn't feel like moving. But then you wonder also, maybe I was feeling fatigued because I was sad, and that could have been depression. Anyway, we'll get to that, right? Because that's a possibility too, right?
That is a possibility as well.
All right. I want to drop one more definition before I speak to you about your personal experience. Social isolation, which is voluntary, versus loneliness, which is involuntary. And I have a definition here which says that social isolation is a state of complete or near complete lack of contact between an individual and society, and it differs from loneliness, which reflects temporary and involuntary lack of contact with other humans in the world.
Right. And, as public figures, we tend to like to have our alone time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always important. But when it comes to a point where you're in a crowd of persons, that is where loneliness can exist as well. Many persons don't realize that.
Okay,
you can be in a huge crowd of persons around you physically, and you just feel alone. You feel lonely.
You see, this is the thing now, and I wanted to differentiate them, but I think it's hard to really put them far apart because one can kind of lead to the other.
Right.
So they can brush close shoulders, right?
Yes, very, very close.
My thing with mental health is the trickiest part is, one, apart from us as Caribbean people generally not being the type to seek help.
Right.
I find that gauging where you are on a mental health scale is tricky, which is probably why you need to seek help, right?
Right. We have a lot of persons who self-diagnose, and when you start to self-diagnose, that's where the issues come up.
Or self-treat.
That's even worse.
Yeah, because self-medication can come in the form of marijuana, or it can come in the form of me telling myself that I don't really need to see somebody professional because I'm fine.
Or what we see a lot of times in the Caribbean context, and even in the helping profession as well, where persons listen to other person's advice.
Mm-hmm.
But the challenge is, what works for you may not work for me.
Right. All right. So, Marlon, I know you're here as a clinical psychologist, but I know you're also willing to share with us your experience in one of these categories. I'm going to allow you to tell me, what have you experienced? Is it being alone, loneliness, social isolation, and what were you going through in those periods in that time period, and what you felt and how you dealt with it?
Can I choose all of the above?
You've been in all 3 categories at some point.
Right. But for me, one of the prominent ones I can remember is definitely loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm always out, I'm always doing things, I'm always engaging people, but there was this involuntary feeling of just being unable to connect with people on an emotional level.
Right.
And I think that's what helps to make me, I guess, a fair enough clinical psychologist, because I'm aware that I have my own issues going on.
Right. So on a personal level, you have personal insight and experience, which allows you to be empathetic.
Right. So I would never say that I understand exactly what somebody is going through, but I can say, boy, from my experience, this is what I have been going through.
Right.
And there have been moments when I'm dealing with clients, I'm engaging them, I'm with them, and when I go home, I'm just not managing. I feel lonely.
Right. And I realize you said that you engage people a lot, which brings me into persons like us who are in healthcare. We will engage numerous people throughout the course of a day at a high functioning level. Lots of customer service, lots of laughing, lots of smiling, lots of engagement, and then we close the doors and we come home and we're not bouncing off the walls anymore.
Right.
So you said most of your engagement, would you say that was professional?
Right, professional.
And what have personal stuff now? And what I'm really asking you is, how would you describe your social personality outside of work? Are you a party person? Are you a homebody? What do you like to do versus what really happens?
What I'd like to do is to just go out every day, interact with people on a social level, not necessarily for parties, but to just engage persons on a whole.
Does it matter the quality of the person? So you prefer close friends, or it could just be random new people?
No, definitely close friends.
I ask you, because some people really just enjoy meeting new people. That could be their buzz,
Right. No, my thing is I'm definitely one who sticks to close friends.
Right. So in an ideal world, you could engage people who matter, but on a regular basis in spaces that are non-professional. Right.
Because when persons find out what you do, they start asking you questions outside of sessions. They start to engage you. They start to just bombard you with a number of comments and questions and, how do you deal with this? How do you deal with that? And
this is when they find out what you do professionally?
Right. And they forget that we're human beings as well. I think sometimes we forget that we're human beings as well.
I'm not gonna lie, some professions don't really exist as humans in our culture. And I find like when you're a police officer, when you're a minister of religion, sometimes doctors too, but not so much I feel as those two, police and minister. And there are others, it's like you don't expect them to do normal things.
Right.
You can't rock and dance at the party. You can't know a dancehall song because you're a minister. You're not supposed to bounce to it. Not even the music can inspire you.
Right. And if I find too that even when I go out with persons who I consider close friends, sometimes you're moving to a tune and then they're looking at you like, why are you doing that? Aren't you religious oriented? And I say to them, but I'm human.
Right. And then that's a whole conversation about perception and judgments and whatever they expect you to be.
Right. So when I go out, I want to be human. I want to be normal. But in engaging persons, there are times when, even when I'm with close friends, there are those moments when I do feel lonely.
Right.
So we're hanging out, we're having a good time, and then just something comes over me and it's just like, I'm just not connecting with my friends.
I feel like I'm your shrink because I'm going to press on, I want you to paint a picture of what loneliness was like for you in any of the scenarios that you were in when you felt that time, and how it crawled upon you, like how mine crawl upon me, what it takes you through, and maybe how it ends or used to end, because I don't know, maybe you have a coping mechanism now. Right. Or maybe like all humans, we're on a journey and it will come and go.
Right, we're all definitely on a journey. But when it comes on to that episode of feeling lonely, and it's something that happened around my birthday in June, where I call it a croaking lizard crawling up your leg. It's pretty rapid and it just quick onset.
I don't want to know about that. Yes.
I'm not afraid of lizards, but the thought of it. So it was a gathering for my birthday, and there were persons there, they were celebrating, but then the conversations that I was having, it just felt like I wasn't connecting with people. So people weren't really interested in what I was saying. So I started to pull back.
But I realized you own the responsibility. So you felt it like it was you? What if it was them? I mean, I don't know.
That's a good point. And that's something else that we all have to evaluate. Is it us or is it somebody else?
Yeah.
But we have to be in a space where we're able to own our own things And I was able to own that I was the one who was pulling back, that I was the one who wasn't connecting with persons. And so that sense of loneliness was coming on.
And
it
this
got
was in
very
a
intense.
space that was created to celebrate you,
Right.
yet you weren't feeling happy in the space.
I wasn't feeling happy. And it's not for lack of them trying or even engaging me.
Did you feel like it was a genuine expression of celebration of you?
Yes,
Yeah,
it was.
alright,
It
so-
was. Oh, and that's one of the things that I guess carries over from my professional life to personal, where I'm able to rely heavily on my gut.
Right.
So I know what persons are feeling or the feeling that I'm getting from them. And in that space, I was definitely getting a good vibe from everybody, but I was just not able to connect.
Which is why you were able to own it as you.
Right.
What do you
And
think was causing it? If you knew.
at the time, I didn't know, but looking back, sometimes, or in that instance rather, it was my own insecurities about my worth, who I am, my value in these persons' lives.
Right.
And I started to pull back, and I'm like, am I boring? Am I not engaging enough? Are people even liking me? Are they here for some other strange reason? And I had to really, even unconsciously, block out that kind of thinking and say, well, no, if they didn't care, they wouldn't have been here. If I was boring, they wouldn't want to engage me. And it's literally changing the script in my mind. That's the process I had to go through.
All right, let's hold on to that, changing the script in your mind, because we'll talk about that in terms of one of the solutions for trying to feel better. But I like where you segue into the voices in our head.
Right.
And that may be a large part of why we feel lonely, personal insecurities. And this doesn't have to be yours specifically, but what do you think are some of the things that feed us? I mean, and if you care to share yours, you can.
Mm-hmm.
Let me take the lead on this one. I don't know. I'm interesting. Let me think about this. It's weird, that you asked me, but I know I have some.
Right.
And I know that sometimes in public spaces, even though most days I'm gregarious and cheerful, that I will withdraw.
Right.
Sometimes just instinctively, based on a gut feeling, or sometimes if something triggers it.
Right.
Something someone says or does, consciously or unconsciously.
And then we respond consciously
And we
unconsciously.
respond, yes, appropriately. But I don't know why it creates a feeling of loneliness. But I don't know. What you have to say about the triggers, the voices?
Sometimes we are our worst enemy.
Make me tell you.
And we create storylines in our minds. And this is what I see from time to time. Persons create storylines in their minds. And once they create the storylines, they begin to believe it.
Mm-hmm.
And they begin to accept it. They begin to embrace it. And it really has nothing to do with the situation.
Self-limiting beliefs.
Self-limiting beliefs, self-esteem, all these things are connected.
Mm-hmm.
And they can lead to a feeling of loneliness. Well, as you said, there are other medical reasons that may trigger loneliness.
Right, we can get into that as well.
Right.
Actually, I feel like you, I have good judgment. So I feel like I can gauge people, and I feel like if I'm being overbearing, I'll pull back.
Right.
But occasionally I'll have moments with people who don't know me very well, where I may feel like I'm being too much.
Right.
And meaning that I know my attention to detail. I know certain things I like when I'm ordering food at a restaurant. I know little things that are quick and fast paced, and maybe the other person is very laid back.
Right.
And I catch myself. And in the moment when I catch myself, I start to feel insecure.
Right. Right.
So then I start to feel like I've annoyed you. I'm too much. I was too much. And then I pull back, and just go in a reclusive stage.
Right. Right.
And just lock off.
And that's one of the things that I think as Caribbean people, and specifically as Jamaicans, we're very vocal.
Yeah.
We will tell you exactly how we feel.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking that if somebody is genuinely uncomfortable with something that we do, either they will say it or we'll see it on their faces.
Yeah, I guess so. Interesting. All right, I have a little bit of science for people, because sometimes I gotta pull on the studies. There is an article here from Harvard University, and it's titled "Loneliness: An Epidemic?" ? Right? It was written April 16, 2018. It's a blog post by Hannah Schultz. Right? It speaks pretty much to the UK having interventions for loneliness because there are even more people diagnosed with loneliness than STIs. And they even have a loneliness minister. This is Tracy Crouch. This is 2018 to help combat the country's chronic loneliness problem.
Right.
And that it's in the US is even labeled an epidemic worthy of public health intervention. Where I want to lead you with this this whole article is, do you think people are becoming more lonely for various reasons, and what are these things?
That's a very good question.
I'll throw in social media, which can be good and
Definitely.
bad, but this is the bad I'm talking about now.
Right. When we're talking about loneliness, and if we go to England, there's a 2-year waiting list for persons to see a therapist.
Right.
And most of the issues that come up are matters of loneliness, of depression, anxiety, that in one way or another are all related to loneliness, which we'll get into later on.
Right.
But in the Caribbean context, and specifically in Jamaica, from my experience, I think that persons are becoming a lot more lonely now
Yeah.
than, say, 10, 15 years ago. And you mentioned social media as well. I find where persons are more engaged on Facebook, on Snapchat, on Instagram, and all the others, but they purport the highest level of loneliness.
You mean the ones who are engaged? But the truth is, Jamaica, let us not even say social media, technology, advances in technology, because back in the day when my parents were growing up, it was them in the country with, lamp and home sweet home lamp. They never had anything else to do but engage each other.
Right, that's true.
Yeah, either you're talking to each other, or you're playing, or you're sleeping, or you're at school, or you're at church with people, and real people. And I give you a scenario with my partner at the time. I mean, she and I would be in the same bed, and I'd be messaging her. And it would seem like it's for fun, but in a way, it's kind of weird.
It is weird.
Like, why would you message somebody beside you in a bed? I've done it before. I've messaged somebody right in front of me just for the fun of it, but then the conversation continues.
This was a real conversation. I'm kind of hungry. Can you get me something to eat? And she's like, okay, fine. And she gets up. And I'm thinking that that's where persons are now. We're more technologically advanced. We're more engaging when it comes on to technology and social media, but it's just promoting that sense of loneliness.
I was going to say we're very connected, but somewhat detached.
Right. I wouldn't even say somewhat. We're very detached. From one another.
You ever walk into spaces and you see people, in a room where there's a dead gap in time, and look at people, everybody has a phone in their hand, everybody.
Yes, and I know that persons will jump and say, oh, it's the younger persons. I have seen persons up into their 80s and 90s on their smartphones constantly.
Yeah.
I know that at some of the universities and one of the universities that I teach at, we have a situation where you have to put up signs to say, look up when you reach the road.
Right.
Because people are their heads are always down, and so they can step out into the road. And so, yes, we're more connected, but I find we're a lot more persons are lonely. They're always on other people's pages. They're always engaging, but they just feel like nothing is going on in their lives, and they're not able to connect on a real level with other people.
And I think social media specifically creates isolation or loneliness because we see so many things that we're not. I mean, this is a conversation. I'm afraid to see what may happen in maybe the next 1 to 2 decades in terms of mental health illnesses tied to social media.
Right.
Because I feel like I bridge the gap of the old school and the new school, and I still am compelled to check my phone multiple times, especially after you post something too. And even though you say you don't feel like you need to be validated by it, of course there's some validation you get from it. Because why would you be checking it so much to see who comments and who likes it? You want to look. Yeah. I'm not saying you change your day for it. Some people do. I don't, but I want to see sometimes.
Right, and I think that's one of the points that many persons want but don't know how to express. The need or the want for validation.
Right.
And when we don't feel validated, when we don't feel as though we're important, is a part of what we've been discussing all along. That is one of the major contributing factors to feeling lonely. Where, again, you're questioning your self-worth, you're questioning yourself, you're questioning so many things about you, and then you don't have anybody to validate you, and you yourself don't validate yourself.
Right. You don't even know how to validate yourself.
Right.
It's very hard to validate yourself, actually. You feel like you need to get it from outside, but you really don't.
And then again, culturally, we're not necessarily a people who enjoy or indulge in persons saying nice things about us.
Right. Or in other success, or we're not really a soccer mom culture, I like to say.
Right.
We're quicker to call a fault
Right.
than to praise a positive.
A positive.
Yeah.
And I see that with my clients. Because when a lot of my clients come in with these issues and I say, I want you to look at your life and see how well you have done up to this point, they start to shy away and they're like, I don't think so, I don't feel that way. Until I help them to change the language that they have been telling themselves that they need to be validated by others, or they don't think that they're any good any at all. But they can start by validating themselves, and then if others validate them, then fine.
How weird is it for you to somewhat self-treat yourself? Meaning, you know what to tell a client, but it's also the same self-conversation you have to have. You know, how do you do that sometimes? Or do you think you need to go and find someone else to counsel you is the more appropriate thing to do?
I don't think I need to. I definitely do go out and seek the help.
Seek the help. Mm.
Because, again, I'm human. And as much as I'm a mental health professional, I am tempted to self-treat. I'm tempted to go out and to try and figure out how I can fix everything. But I realize I can't.
Yeah, I don't write prescriptions for myself. So I guess it's the same thing, right?
Right. But once you engage somebody, now I have a therapist.
Yeah.
Every therapist needs a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I'm dealing with somebody, and say that the person is dealing with the same kind of issues I deal with, I have to push everything that I'm feeling or my own struggles to the back of my mind and just totally engage my clients.
You have to separate.
I have to separate while empathizing and understanding. When I leave the session now and I feel a loneliness or I feel like I'm not functioning as well as I should, I go and I find my therapist and I say, hey, this is what's going on. How do I begin to fix this?
Right, I like that. Because then you wouldn't also want to bring your fears and insecurities with your problem into the therapy session with another client as well.
Right.
Wonderful stuff. I want to touch on one thing I was going to ask you later, but I'll ask you now since you brought it up. Have you ever opened your Instagram and felt left out? And by that I mean you open the stories, you see a close friend, and you realize they're out on a field trip, and you think to yourself, but me and that person, they're close. How come you never get invited? Like, that's the initial thought. Even though at the core of it, you know that you really don't have to be invited.
Right.
Because it has nothing to do with you. You don't know if them taking them cousin out on a day trip. You don't know if them and them person gone a country. You have no reason to be a part of this. But somewhere in your mind, you have orchestrated a storyline where you're like, but I'm close enough to them. Why wasn't I invited? How you feel about that? That is being left out.
That happens to me, I would say, too often.
Which just makes you feel more alone, right?
Yes, it does. And I mean, I would say to somebody, oh, let's go here, let's go there. And they're like, no, I'm busy. And then you see them on Instagram.
Next weekend, they're the same place where you want to go.
Right. And, they say, bunny, but at the same time,
you don't know the circumstances.
You don't know the circumstances. And it does play a lot of mind tricks on you.
Yeah.
So you begin again, keep coming back to it, begin to question your self-worth. And one of the things too that I see on WhatsApp is when people put up their status and they say, oh, happy birthday to my brother, to my friend, to my close companion, and then you're just waiting and your birthday comes and goes and nobody posts anything.
Not posting, not even get a screenshot, nothing in a picture wall.
Right. So, and those things do contribute to a feeling of loneliness.
And it can potentially accumulate too, because you might start having a little scorecard, like a low-key scorecard in your head for each person.
Definitely.
Like, okay, so you've gone to the beach today. All right, so you're in the park tomorrow. Right, this is the third time you haven't invited me out.
Right. And those things, whether we like to admit it or not, they do affect us.
I like that we're saying it, because this is actually how it plays out in the minds of people sitting down at the home scrolling through the phone. And the ugly side of it is that your response may be withdrawal when the person on the other end having a good time had no intention to hurt you.
Right.
They're just living their life. and they're entitled to live it and post it. And you have now created a storyline that has caused you to retract.
Right.
Now talk to them malice, Bex up.
Can't bother.
Can't bother.
And I'm happy that you said that, because I've had situations where I've said to friends, "Hey, I see you posting. I don't even invite me." They said, "When was the last time you invited me out?"
Well, yeah. Clap back.
Like, wow.
Clap back.
Ouch.
All right. So there's a clap back, and you know what? I'm glad you brought that point up too, because that's something I've stopped doing. And this now comes down to personal responsibility in terms of how you choose to respond. I never see somebody post somewhere and ask them why I wasn't invited. That's me personally.
Right.
But I had to get to this stage. I feel like maybe a couple of years I would have probably asked specific friends.
Right.
But now I'm at a stage where I could say anybody anywhere, and I swear to God, when I ask you, because I've decided that I don't have the right to be there unless you want me there.
Right.
And if you haven't invited me, then I didn't make your list, and that's fine.
But at the same time, it could be that the person wants to engage on a different level. What I find at times, is that sometimes the people who they go out with, or friends who go out and they're having a grand time, they're not necessarily as close to those persons as they are to us. But we have already created a script in our minds, and we're sticking to that script.
Yeah, and it may not, it may not be that deep for them. It may not be that serious for the person planning the trip, so they're not really feeling like they're leaving anybody out. But I am always reminding other friends of mine that adding one person to a dynamic can change the entire energy of the dynamic.
Right.
So, I may want to go with Bob and Susie this time around, but maybe Marlon is not a good fit for them.
Right.
So I don't invite Marlon because all of we not going to work out today.
Right.
And that's a conscious decision, and that's fine too.
Right, because if they're going out to say a beach party and they know that I used to be a full-time minister of religion and they're whining and going on, they may not feel very comfortable. I'm very comfortable with what I want to do.
Right.
But, again, that's the situation. People create stories in their minds.
Yeah, and that's funny that person has also created a story which has now left you out, which may not really be true.
Right.
Because they might think that this setting won't work, but it actually wouldn't be a problem if all of us were together. But anyway, such is life, right?
That's true. And one of the questions that I always ask persons who feel lonely is, when was the last time you took yourself out on a date?
All right, let's go right there since you're there. All right, ways to combat loneliness. Taking yourself out on a date. What do you mean by that?
Literally just going out and you dress nicely. You go out for dinner.
By yourself?
Yes.
Yes.
You enjoy your company. And this is where it's going to become very important. It is not burdening your mind with the problems that you have, but it's just simply enjoying who you are and celebrating that.
I love that. And it's not only just about enjoying who you are and celebrating that. It's about living in a moment and enjoying the moment, because we often feel like great things won't happen when we're alone, right?
Right.
I could go to Latin night, and I'm using this as a great example because it's a space where you can go in and learn to dance, learn the moves between like 7 to 8, and then they do the regular dance in 8 to 11. I could walk in there alone. I'll find somebody who doesn't have a partner. I'll meet someone new. I'll learn to dance with them. And I could dance the night away without my regular friends.
Right.
And that could be so cool.
And on my side, I'm a foodie.
Right.
So I love experimenting with new kinds of food. And when I see some things on the menu that I can't even pronounce, and I'm able to eat it and enjoy and engage, and I can say, I did something for myself.
Exactly. And you tasted something new, and that was the experience. Also, just being out by yourself, you learn things about yourself. About the venue, about yourself.
Right. And whether persons consider that there is a God or consider the universe, sometimes the universe or God wants to teach us something in that moment when we're alone.
So that, I was going to say, you also can take a picture of the food and post on your Insta story. So somebody can say, Marlon, where you there? And why you never invite me?
I know, right?
But
create some jealousy there as well.
Create some jealousy. No, we're not going to go tit for tat. But what you just said is so right about that whole self-dating thing.
Right.
and creating a space for yourself where you can enjoy and celebrate yourself and enjoy moments.
Right. Right.
So that means we need to be more open.
We need to be more open. Also, one of the important things for us to do is, as we had said before, to change the script in our minds. We tend to have a one-tracked mind all the time when it comes on to certain things. So I'm feeling alone, I'm feeling lonely, I can't connect, therefore there's something wrong with me, and then it just gets progressively worse.
Right.
But the minute we start to change the way we talk to ourselves, that's a very important thing. And I give you a scenario. My son listens to the same CD over and over and over again.
It's not
and no
Baby
matter
Shark,
what
is
I
it?
do, it's not Baby Shark.
Okay, cool. I like Baby Shark though.
I like Baby Shark too, but no. And when he wants to listen to the CD, it's just that CD alone. And I changed it one day, and he threw a tantrum.
Yeah, you mess
at
up
4
his
years
mojo,
old.
yeah. Don't mess up his mojo.
No, but no, apparently that's his favorite CD. No,
The new one?
the new one.
Ah.
And what I'm saying is that at times we can change the script in our minds, and yes, we will throw a tantrum because it's uncomfortable. It's a new way of thinking. It's validating ourselves. But that helps in a lot of ways to improve our mood and the feeling of loneliness.
And I'll even reword it another way too. Challenge yourself.
Right.
Because you challenged him. You challenged his musical script and he resisted.
Right.
And turns out that he liked it.
Right.
Oh wow, that's great. All right, so we mentioned self-date,
Right.
positive self-talk, change the narrative in your head.
Right.
What other ways you think we can probably try to help ourselves? So we're in the self-help space now before we even get to seeking outside help.
Right. Right. It is also about changing the environment that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
So if that means that we're around our desk doing work and we feel lonely, or we're among friends, taking a walk, walking outside of the situation does help to change our mood.
Make me tell you. Yeah, working in a coffee shop helps change my entire mood too if I feel alone. Because then there are people around me who aren't my friends, but I'm in a space where people are.
Right, right.
And something about it changes my energy.
Definitely. And even doing something physical. There's something I did with my clients, and again, this is something that I've done on my own as well, where I'm in a personal space, I'm by myself, but I'm feeling lonely, and the thoughts getting worse and worse, and I just get up and start jumping up and down for no reason at all. I'm like, why am I jumping up and down? This feels awkward, this feels weird, but then I start laughing at myself.
But it feels awesome.
Then it begins to feel awesome. It feels awkward at first, but then it really begins to allow you to feel different.
All right, let me throw another thing to you. Same article from Harvard Business School. It mentions how loneliness is hard to measure, and that it's not as simple as measuring blood pressure. But there's a diagram here which shows the basics of a social network size. And an average network has several close ties that are often in contact and many acquaintances that add substance to the network. And a low-scoring network has more weak or absent ties that lack qualities like mutual confiding or reciprocal interest. What do I want to say about this? This it's adding to more reasons why people could feel lonely. So if you have someone that you can't confide in,
right,
and you have someone that you cannot do the things that you like with,
right,
these are some of the things that could help to make you feel more lonely.
Right.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that, because again, when you have a small circle, or you're feeling paranoid around with the persons around you, that contributes to a sense of loneliness as well.
Yeah. Let's also talk a little bit about one thing, but going in two different directions. Same article speaks about how loneliness affects our body, and it's pretty much saying that it can affect the immune system. It can cause, over time, being lonely causes certain hormones to be released in the brain that can affect everything from your sugar levels to your blood pressure.
Right.
How you feel about that?
Definitely. And again, working in the hospital context, we find where a lot of persons come in, they're not feeling well, they're having a lot of physical ailments, and they realize that there is just no definable medical basis for it.
Right.
Or the root is not medical.
Right.
It's mental.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are a lot of persons who come in to the hospital settings or even into my office and they're having a lot of physical symptoms, and it is other times tied to the emotions or the feelings that they're having.
Right.
And if we're speaking specifically about loneliness, yes, it does affect blood pressure, immune system, a lot of these areas that we don't really think about, or we don't make the connection between the two. And loneliness especially has been tied to a number of dare I say, mental illnesses.
And I want to make a clear distinction for our listeners. I think we use the word medical like healthcare providers. And when we say that some mental things are medical. They fall under medical illnesses, right?
Right.
But when we say medical, we mean sometimes you can have a medical illness that causes you to have depression or mental symptoms, which is a little bit different because the mental things are secondary or as a cause of from happening secondary to the medical thing primarily. Whereas this case, we're talking about loneliness being the primary or maybe the only.
Well, in some instances.
And it probably rarely is the only,
Yes.
Yeah, but it could be the only.
Right. And as using medical because it's the broad umbrella for everything.
Right.
So yes, mental and physical.
Fall
rather.
under.
Right.
Under medical.
And so let's find out a person separating the two. But I think that they're tied in a lot of ways.
Which is why some mental illnesses can be treated with medication.
Right. But we usually recommend that if persons are being treated with medicine, they would also need therapy as well. Right.
Like the two go together, like you do cardiovascular and weightlifting as a complete workout.
Right. So for us, again, we subscribe to in the helping profession.
Right.
We talk about the biopsychosocial model that we align to. So we deal with the body, we deal with the mind, and we also deal with the social as well.
And I do appreciate you saying helping profession because I really haven't come over to that term, but I like it because it is all encompassing, and I'm getting that's where we're moving to saying the helping profession, right?
Right.
And it encompasses all the different players and people involved.
Right. So not just psychologists and psychiatrists, but
right.
we have other professionals
people,
working together.
Community health aides, a whole bag of other people.
Yeah, occupational therapists.
Yeah. That contribute to your mental health.
Right.
What are some of the detrimental effects of loneliness? I think we already know some already.
Right. Well, one of the things that works hand in hand with loneliness is, of course, depression. We have other situations where loneliness impacts even your sexual.
Right, your libido. So right, you're not performing well. Because but this is maybe the loneliness is leading to depression, leading to decreased libido.
Right. But it's not as clear cut as that.
Or streamlined as that, right?
Streamlined as that.
That, boom, boom.
Because we like to say, oh, this leads to this, leads to that, leads to that. But that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah.
Maybe loneliness came first. Maybe the other symptoms came first. But they're all working together to bring us to a lower state of health.
Right, which is affecting our overall functioning.
Right.
And I mean, of course, other detrimental effects could be suicide, parasuicide.
Right.
Right, because people just can't cope. And that's when you reach down to them levels there.
Right.
You want to end it.
And again, yes. For suicide, that's definitely the case. And I mean, I'm not a suicide specialist, but I do know that loneliness is a major contributing factor to that high instance.
What are some of the medical illnesses that are off the top of your head that you can think of that can cause you to feel depressed, and maybe your depression is causing you to isolate or feel lonely?
Things like cancer, diabetes.
And cancer might be directly due to the fact that you think you're going to die. So that one is like the consequences depressing you.
Right.
I know thyroid disease can be the actual hormonal changes.
Right.
Can affect your mood.
And that's funny enough, that's exactly what I'm dealing with right now. Yeah. And again, I like this forum because it shows that, hey, we as healthcare providers are human as well.
So what did you find out about the thyroid, if you don't mind sharing?
I don't mind. I have hypothyroidism or Hashimoto's.
That's what they think it is.
Right.
And it was a blood test that picked up what?
That picked up that there was an abnormal level of...
It's thyroid stimulating hormone, TSH, yeah?
Right, TSH.
Was higher than it should be.
Much, much higher than it should be. And so that was what was contributing to a lot of the various challenges that I was facing, in terms of feeling lonely, mood swings.
Well, we're making that conclusion now, right?
Right.
But I mean, the truth is, at the time when you were going through those things, you probably weren't thinking that you could have had an underlying medical condition that may have been supporting it. So it may have been life and it may have been the medical condition, and both.
Right.
Or one more than the other.
But one of the things that I had to do, even before finding out what was going on and all these things, I had to come to a place where I accepted that this is a part of my struggle.
Right.
I don't think many people are able to do that.
And me knowing you as an individual, I know you're also a health-seeking type person. So
Right.
you aggressively will check out something if something is wrong,
Right.
something is off. You usually check on it, and that's not common for a lot of men in our Jamaican culture, particularly.
Right.
So kudos to you for that, because I think if you weren't as aggressive in seeking a first and a second and a third opinion, then you wouldn't have gotten the answers that you needed. Because eventually you're gonna stumble upon it if you're interested.
Right. And I think that that's the kind of attitude that we need to adopt as a country, where persons don't wait until everything is falling apart before you start to seek help in various ways. If you're beginning to feel lonely and it's beginning to affect your everyday life, you go out and you seek the help. I know that whenever I'm not at my optimum and it's getting to a place where it's very uncomfortable, I know that it is time for me to go and seek the help that I need.
Right.
Right.
What were you going to say?
No, so I'm saying that to tie that into what we were saying before, with the whole matter of loneliness, we find where we're not seeking the kind of help that we need to. And it may come as a result of just biological or other factors, but it may be influenced by mental illness. Things like depression, anxiety, again, may influence.
So we need to look at it from all directions. So maybe if you are feeling alone or lonely, you should question whether you might be going through something deeper and you should seek help. Or it could be medical, causing the mental symptoms. Then you need to seek help there too. I mean, this is a weird plug for me because I usually don't do this, but there is something on a blood form called an executive panel. There's executive male and executive female. A lot of adults, once they hit a certain age, start to do them annually. They choose to do them around their birthday. They just pick a milestone date and they do them annually. And I encourage it because it is blood, urine, and stool that they test.
Right.
And pretty much I want my listeners to think of it as a baseline screen. You check your blood count, check your white cell count, you check your thyroid, your liver, your kidney function.
Right.
It covers such a broad base that really what the aim of it is to do is if one of these things start to go out of whack, maybe you'll catch it in the blood test before it catch you.
Exactly.
And it's something that your doctor can write up for you. So, if you're feeling your prostate for the men, you check your PSA. It doesn't hurt because that's kind of how you randomly stumbled on it. Somebody said, let's do your thyroid.
Right.
And then here we are.
And I'm thinking also that for us as psychologists, we don't want persons to just come when things are falling apart. You can come when you just think that there's something that you just need to work on before it begins to intensify.
Well, this is the second time I'll mention that I am interested in this year in going for a mental health checkup. Not because I necessarily feel I'm having problems, but I feel it might be good for me to talk through some stuff.
Right. So I'm available on...
Actually, why not? Marlon, how can people find you? But we're going to still talk some more now, but how can people find you in your professional capacity?
All right. I operate primarily out of St. Joseph's Hospital on Deanery Road, but I also have a private practice on Meadowbrook, Maine, and persons can contact me via email. It's yahwehguide@gmail.com or on my cell phone, 876-260-4077.
Please spell Yahweh Guide, but I'll put it in the show notes as well, so people can actually go on the web page for this episode, and you'll find Marlon's information if you want to find him.
All right, it's YAHWEHGUIDE.
YahwehGuide@gmail.com for the people that will never go read the Bible. Oh wow! All right, so wait, Marlon, I'm not done with you. I have what else I want to ask you. I want to know. So we discussed a whole lot of things actually. Consequences of loneliness, being alone versus loneliness, whether it's the primary or it's secondary.
Right.
suicide, depression, lots of cool stuff. I guess we've kind of touched on how we can get out of the loneliness cycle, positive self-talk, seeking help, changing the narrative. I want to touch on something random, because you know I love the random things in this show.
Oh, yes, I do.
Dating apps and online dating as a solution of getting out. I have a couple of friends who have had success stories with online dating. And I mean, clearly it doesn't mean that you're lonely to date online, but it may mean that you're not really succeeding in the face-to-face of whichever environment you're in. So you move online, and then this site matches you up.
Right.
I want you to touch on that, and I also want you to touch on how you feel about the hookup sites and our apps. And Tinder is what most people use. I think in the hetero world and in the other world, they use Grindr.
Right.
And people need to be hip to this stuff. If you don't know about it now, you know.
Right.
How you feel about online dating first?
Well, online dating, it has its positives and negatives.
Yeah.
And again, positive in the sense that we're already technologically advanced, so we're always on social media, we're always engaging persons on that level. But when we move past the electronic way of communication to real face-to-face, that is where I think a lot of the problems are, because we have become so used to communicating and connecting with persons on different apps, but then the human connection is where the problem is. And I say that because a lot of persons who come to me find it difficult to express themselves. They can always message me and tell me what's going on with them or what's happening throughout the day, but when it comes on to speaking to me face to face, that's where the difficulty is. And I mean, I have had that problem as well.
Right.
Yes, I've been on a dating app as well.
Oh wow, that's what you were just telling us. Confessions. I haven't done it. I'm not bold enough yet.
All right. And when you build a solid conversation with somebody and you feel like you're engaging them, and then when you meet up in person, you know, they're not as engaging as.
But you know, it reminds me of why I speak about podcasts being audio versus video and audio, because there's a power in audio when you can create your own visual. But they know you meet someone now and you both see each other, and they know you have a whole bag of other things factoring into whether you decide you like this person, when initially it was just based on the personality and maybe a picture. And then now you have a bag of other factors. Is the picture true? Catfish episode.
Right, I know. See, I'm building your podcast. I know, right? And that's one of the things as we talk about these apps where you're building conversations with persons, but we can't ignore that physical attraction is also important in connecting. And so you're building a good conversation. You don't really know, or you're not really sure what this person looks like. And when you meet up in person, you realize this really isn't. Well,
I'm assuming you're going to eventually meet. So maybe what I should ask you, are you for or against online dating? How do you feel in terms of as a solution of getting out of a lonely space? Is it reasonable to do?
I was trying to avoid that question, but I personally, I don't think it's a good way to.
Based on your experience?
Based on my experience.
And based on some of my friends, I have 2 that are married and 1 that's dating successfully, but both of them did it in the US, and the one who's dating is in the UK. And she did express that dating culture is very different in terms of the type of men she met.
Right.
Versus here. And she met some duds on the way to the one that's a gem.
Right.
But she just said it's different from Caribbean because it's so small here. Anyway.
Right. And not many people have that ability to deal with a lot of the rejections that come with these sites or the duds that
so that's why I'm going to go on it and we can't bother with the rejection. Worse, people already know my face out the road. Right, so when them see them, I'm going to say, you're Mario, Evon, that pan the thing. And no.
Right.
But some of my reasons are a little different.
Right.
I'll meet people face to face.
I
meet a lot of them anyway. So in my day to day. So.
Right.
Wow. All right. What I want to do now, Marlon, is just kind of figure out where you are now in your journey. I'm not going to call it a loneliness journey. Mm-hmm. But you said you've experienced being alone, being lonely.
Right.
You also work with clients and see their experiences. I know you're actually dealing with finding out about a new illness that you may be having. How do you feel about loneliness? Feel like you've coped well? You feel like you're in a positive space regarding the whole topic of being alone?
I think for me, yes, I'm on the positive side right now. And I will continue to be on the positive side because I have to speak that into being
Right.
for my own life. But it began with me embracing the thought that, hey, not all is well with me.
Right.
And I think that's where the conversation needs to begin with ourselves, where we begin to look at ourselves and say, hey, I'm not okay. I need to work on some things. And that's what I did. I had to say to myself that, look, there are some things that need to change, and the first thing that needs to change is my attitude towards what I'm going through now. And I think that's where it really began to sink in for me, that even though loneliness is something that is involuntary largely,
Right.
we have the power to change the script in our own minds. And so for me, I've been able to be on that journey where I do feel lonely still, but it doesn't last as long as it used to. I'm feeling a lot more comfortable with myself. I'm going out by myself more often, and I'm engaging myself more. And I think that's so important for many of us.
Unlike everything, we continue to journey.
Right.
For myself, I think I listen to my body a lot. So I normally feel when I'm a little bit off.
Right.
But I think I am going to now be more careful of discerning between whether I'm socially isolating,
right,
versus whether it's voluntary versus involuntary,
right,
and also whether I think it's healthy versus it being unhealthy.
Right.
And I know personally that I am so busy I can occupy time with work.
Right.
And I think sometimes we busy up ourselves. And being busy might actually be some kind of weird coping mechanism for covering your loneliness.
Right.
So, these are things that I'm going to try come to terms with too. And again, before the year is out, I'm going to come on and talk through it. I'm going to tell people about my first counseling experience.
All right. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's going to happen because we're going to do it.
Yes.
Because mental health is as important as any other health. And we need to start really encouraging people to treat it as such.
Right. And, as a note, I have an Instagram page called Love Your Mind.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And I did it because I was saying that so many times I see people who are exercising and they're moving and they're grooving and they're in the gym, but nobody really talks about loving your mind.
Yeah.
Loving that part that you can't touch.
Yeah, if I could massage it, I'd massage it.
There we go. And so that's...
And that's spelled Love Your Mind, LOVEYOURMIND.
Right.
Love Your Mind on Instagram.
Underscore on both sides.
Gotcha. Underscore Love Your Mind underscore.
Right.
I'll throw that in the show notes as well.
All right. No problem.
You have any final words?
Love your mind.
No.
And embrace the challenges. Embrace the realities that you have. Accept who you are. And just learn that we all go through different challenges. We all go through our own struggles. But once you learn to accept them and start to work on who we are and to build ourselves, we're indomitable.
Indomitable. Marlon, I thank you for being here. I respect everybody who comes to my table here at Talk Truth, and because the vulnerability and the openness to share to a wide audience. As our audience grows, a lot of people hear your story.
Right.
And I know that it touches many people and encourages them to go and change, do something different. So thank you. Thanks for being here. And folks, I'll put all of Marlon's information in the show notes. If you're feeling lonely or alone, you know that you're not alone, because there's a lot of help out here. And go take yourself on a date. Go shake a leg. Thanks again, Marlon.
All right.
Thank you guys so much for listening to episode 11 of Talk Truth. Looking forward to bringing you some brand new twists to the podcast as we grow and move forward. Look out for them. There will be some little cool elements that are going to be coming in. So again, excited for those. Thank you guys for listening from all over the world. We have listeners coming from as far as Australia. We see y'all in China. We see y'all in the UK, the US, Canada, the Caribbean. It is really really cool to see the back end statistics that I see that you don't. But guess what? One day I'll share them with you, all right? I wanted to let you know that episode number 9 actually has a video component, and that's on my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Mario Evon, and it's in the Talk Truth with Mario Evon folder if you're into playlists. All the episodes exist in an audio format on YouTube if you're a YouTuber, but just this one episode, part 1 with Randy Rowe on personal financial freedom, Randy allowed me to collect some footage of him and I recording at the Hub Co-working Jamaica, and so you actually get to see a little bit of visual, a little bit of what it feels like. My eyes are planted in the laptop, and sometimes I'm looking at Randy, a whole bag of things are going on. It was just like a teaser, so you could see a little bit of the behind the scenes, but as far as I am concerned, we'll be remaining audio. But take a glance at that video and check it out. And again, thank you so much for the support. Thank you for remaining here with us at Talk Truth, a place where your truth shall become your power and set you free. My name is Mario Evon. Again, such a pleasure. Can't wait to talk to you next Sunday. Blessed love.